Around 2,500 years ago, a man walked away from everything. Not from poverty, from wealth. He had a palace, servants, a family, protection from every uncomfortable truth about what life actually is. And at 29 years old, he walked through the gates into the world. And for the first time saw what most of us spend our entire lives trying not to see: old age, sickness, death. That's it. Those three things. And the encounter shattered something in him so completely that he spent the next 6 years trying to understand what he had seen, what it meant, what, if anything, could be done about it. His name was Siddhartha Gautama. And what he eventually figured out, sitting under a tree at dawn after everything else had failed, has been quietly relevant to human beings ever since, including now. Including, I would argue, especially now. I'm a father in my 30s. I've spent years reading these texts, not as religion, I want to be clear about that up front, as philosophy, as practical thinking about how to live inside the specific difficulty of being human. And the more I read Buddha, the more I think he was describing something we are experiencing right now, today, in a form he couldn't have imagined but would have recognized immediately. The endless wanting, the inability to sit with discomfort, the way we run from stillness, the confusion between stimulation and happiness. He had a name for all of this. He had a path through it. Let's think about what he actually said. Before he became Buddha, before the enlightenment under the tree, Siddhartha tried two things. First, he lived in absolute comfort, palace life, protected from every difficulty, everything provided, nothing lacking. And it produced a specific kind of emptiness that comfort always produces when it's the only thing available. Then, in reaction to that, he went to the opposite extreme. 6 years of severe asceticism, eating almost nothing, sleeping on hard ground, pushing the body to its absolute limit in the belief that the path to truth ran through suffering. His body nearly gave out. And at the end of 6 years, he had found nothing. Not enlightenment, not peace, not answers. Just a destroyed body and the dawning realization that neither extreme was the answer. What he found instead, eventually, became known as the middle way. And I want to be careful here, because the middle way gets misunderstood as moderation in the boring sense. Everything in moderation, don't go too far, balance your chakras, have a green smoothie. That's not what it means. What it means is something more specific and more demanding. It means examine your relationship to what you're doing. Not how much, but why. Not the behavior itself, but the motivation underneath. Are you working because the work matters, or because stopping feels like dying? Are you resting because you genuinely need rest, or because you're running from something? Are you seeking comfort because you're depleted, or because discomfort is something you've never learned to tolerate? The middle way is not about the amount, it's about the relationship. Here's why this matters in 2026. The modern world presents itself as a series of extremes, and it rewards people who commit fully to one of them. Hustle culture, work all the time, sleep when you're dead. If you're not grinding, you're falling behind. Or radical comfort, optimize your leisure, soft life. You deserve to rest, protect your energy. Both of these have the same structure. They are selling you an absolute, a total commitment to one direction. And both of them, if you follow them long enough, produce the same thing Siddhartha experienced: the exhaustion of excess. The hustle person burns out. The comfort person finds that ease, pursued as an end in itself, becomes its own emptiness. Because neither one is asking the right question. The right question is not, how hard should I work or how much should I rest? The right question is, what is the thing I'm actually trying to do here? What does this serve? Is this action, this specific action right now, coming from something real in me? Or is it a response to external pressure that I've stopped examining? That examination is the middle way, not a formula, a practice. I'll say something personal here, briefly. I've been on both extremes. The period of running at maximum, producing constantly, measuring my value entirely by output, and the period of pulling back, telling myself I was protecting my well being when I was actually just avoiding the work. Both felt justified at the time. Both were, in retrospect, a failure to ask the right question. The middle way, the one that actually works, is harder than either extreme, because it requires constant, honest examination of motivation. You can't set it once and forget it. You have to keep asking, every day, in the small decisions. The word karma has been so thoroughly absorbed into casual language that it's almost lost its meaning. You cut someone off in traffic and then get a flat tire. Karma. Someone does something unkind and something bad happens to them. That's karma. This is not what Buddha was talking about. Karma, in the actual teaching, is not cosmic justice. It's not a ledger in the sky where good deeds and bad deeds are balanced out and returned to you. It is something more specific and more immediately relevant. It's the relationship between intention and consequence. Buddha taught that the root of karma is not the action itself, it's the motivation that generates the action. If you help someone from genuine compassion, no audience required, no social media post about it, just the action itself arising from a real impulse toward another person's well-being, that action plants something in you. Not points in a cosmic system. Something in how you habitually relate to the world. You become, very slightly, a person more inclined toward that kind of action. And if you act from greed, resentment, fear, or the desire to appear good rather than actually be good, that plants something too. Over time, these small plantings become the soil of your character. Not fate, not destiny, just consequence, understood clearly. This reframing matters because it removes the magical thinking while keeping the insight. You don't need to believe in reincarnation or cosmic bookkeeping for karma to be meaningful. You just need to notice that your habitual ways of acting, the patterns of motivation underneath your behavior, shape what you become over time. The person who acts consistently from fear becomes more fearful, more reactive, more defended. The person who acts consistently from genuine compassion, including compassion toward themselves, becomes someone who finds that way of acting more natural, more automatic. This is karma as character formation, and it has a very practical implication. Before you act, before you send the message, have the conversation, make the decision, there is one question worth asking. What is actually motivating this right now? Not what you want the motivation to be, what it actually is. Fear, love, the need to be seen, genuine care, resentment wearing the clothes of helpfulness. That honest examination, practiced consistently, is karma in the form you can actually use. Most people, most of the time, are not where they are, physically present, mentally elsewhere. At dinner, thinking about work. At work, thinking about what happened at home. In a conversation, composing the next thing they're going to say rather than actually listening to what's being said. This is not a character flaw. It's the default state of an unexamined human mind. Buddha identified this clearly, without judgment, as the source of a specific kind of suffering. Not dramatic suffering, but the low-level dissatisfaction of a life half-lived. A life spent in the vicinity of experience rather than inside it. His teaching on this is simple in concept and genuinely difficult in practice. The present moment is the only place where your life is actually happening, Not in the replay of yesterday, not in the anticipation of tomorrow. Here, now, this conversation, this meal, this ordinary Tuesday. And the modern world is specifically, deliberately designed to pull you out of this moment. The phone notification arrives precisely to interrupt you. The algorithm has studied what captures attention and delivers it in a form engineered to produce the next click. The news cycle presents a constant stream of events happening elsewhere, to people you don't know, about which you have almost no ability to do anything, but which are presented with exactly the emotional charge required to make you feel like you should be paying attention to them rather than to your actual life. I'm not saying this to produce guilt. I'm saying it because I think it's important to see clearly what is happening. You are being systematically removed from your own present moment, continuously, by design. And Buddha would recognize this immediately, not as a technological problem, as a problem of attention. The question he would ask is the same question that has always been relevant. Where is your attention right now? Did you choose to put it there? And is that where it belongs? I want to say something that might sound strange. Boredom is not the enemy. The modern world treats boredom as an emergency. There is always something to fill the gap. A podcast for the drive, a video for the meal, a scroll for the queue. The idea of just standing somewhere without input has become genuinely uncomfortable for most people. But boredom, real boredom, the kind where nothing is happening and you're just with yourself, is where the present moment actually lives. It's in that quiet that you notice things. What you're actually thinking, how you're actually feeling, what you actually want, separate from what you've been told to want. The present moment is not dramatic. That's the thing. It's not an experience. It's not a peak. It's just here. This. Ordinary. And that ordinariness, when you actually stop resisting it, turns out to be enough. More than enough. Buddha used an image I've thought about a lot. A cup filling with water, drop by drop. 1 drop is nothing. 2 drops are nothing. 100 drops, still not much to look at. But keep adding. Every day, without stopping. The cup fills. He was talking about character, about the way we become who we are. Not through dramatic decisions or sudden transformations, but through the accumulation of small, repeated choices that individually seem almost meaningless. 1 morning of meditation, nothing. 1 day of choosing kindness instead of reaction, nothing you'd notice. 100 mornings, a year of small choices. Something has changed. You can't point to the moment, but you are not quite the same person you were. This is a deeply unfashionable idea in 2026. The culture wants the transformation, the breakthrough, the system that changes everything in 30 days or your money back, the one decision that makes you a different person. And these things are compelling because they match how we want change to work. Quickly, visibly, without the boring in between. But Buddha was pointing at how change actually works. Slowly, invisibly, through repetition that feels pointless until it doesn't. The same principle applies in both directions. The small habits that pull you down operate exactly the same way. 1 evening of scrolling instead of sleeping, nothing. 1 day of avoiding the difficult conversation, nothing. 100 evenings, a year of small avoidances. You have drifted somewhere. You're not sure how. It happened in increments too small to notice as they were happening. The insight is simply this. The small decisions are not small. They are, accumulated over time, the answer to the question, what kind of person am I? Not the big decisions, not the dramatic moments, the ones nobody sees. I want to be direct about something here. I have watched myself drift, more than once, through exactly this mechanism. Not through any single bad decision, through the accumulation of small avoidances, small comforts, small compromises that each seemed reasonable and together moved me somewhere I didn't want to be. The return was also through small decisions. No dramatic reversal, just choosing slightly differently. Today, and then tomorrow. That's the teaching, not transformation, accumulation, drop by drop. The world is loud. Not loud in the way that thunder is loud, sharp, temporary, then gone. Loud in the way that background noise is loud, constant, below the level of active attention, just always there. Opinions everywhere, commentary on everything, everyone talking, nobody really listening. And Buddha's teaching on silence is something I've come to find increasingly relevant as the volume of the world increases. He taught that genuine wisdom does not live in the accumulation of words, it lives in the space between them. The person who speaks constantly, who must have an opinion on everything, who fills every silence with sound, is not wiser for it. They are often less wise because the constant output prevents the input that reflection requires. The person who knows when to be silent, who has enough internal stability that they don't need to speak to feel present, that person sees more clearly. Not because silence is inherently superior to speech, but because silence is where you hear yourself. And you cannot know what you actually think, what you actually feel, what you actually want, until you've been quiet enough to notice. There is a specific practice that follows from this. Before speaking, especially in a charged moment, a difficult conversation, a situation where your first impulse is to react, pause. Not a long pause, a breath, a moment of genuine quiet. In that pause, ask, is what I'm about to say true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Not every conversation needs all three, but asking the questions changes the quality of what comes out. This is not passivity. It is not suppression. It is the specific kind of presence that can only exist when you're not already in the process of generating your next output. The space before the response. That space is, in Buddha's teaching, where wisdom lives. Buddha taught something about compassion that I think is often misunderstood. He didn't teach compassion as a moral obligation, as something you should feel because feeling it makes you a good person. He taught it as something closer to accurate perception. When you look at another person, any person, including one who has treated you badly, and you see them clearly, you see a being who is suffering. Not always in obvious ways, not always in ways they'd acknowledge, but fundamentally in the way that all humans suffer, from wanting things to be different than they are, from the gap between what they have and what they believe they need. You recognize that gap because you live in it too. And from that recognition, not from duty, not from obligation, but from simple recognition, compassion arises naturally. This is why Buddha said that hatred is never resolved by more hatred, not as a moral principle, as a practical observation. Hatred directed at a person who is suffering adds to the suffering in the world without removing anything from it. It doesn't solve the problem, it perpetuates it. Whereas compassion, even when it doesn't change the other person, changes you. It removes the weight of resentment. It frees the energy that resentment was consuming. This is not soft. It is actually quite demanding, because it requires seeing the person who hurt you not as a villain in your story, but as a human being in their own story. That's harder than anger. but it is lighter. There's a related teaching on generosity that I find equally practical. Buddha taught that giving, not as sacrifice, but as a genuine choice to extend what you have outward, produces something in the giver that accumulation doesn't. The modern world teaches the opposite. Accumulate first, give from surplus. Protect what's yours before extending to others. But the teaching is that the capacity to give is itself a form of freedom. The person who can give time, attention, kindness, material things, without it destabilizing them, has built something real. And the person who cannot give, who hoards time, who withholds kindness, who calculates every extension of themselves, has often built a prison they experience as security. This doesn't mean give until you have nothing. The teaching is explicitly not self-destruction. But there's a version of generosity, even a small version, daily, practiced, that produces something no amount of accumulation does. The sense that you have enough to give some away, which is, quietly, one of the best feelings available to a human being. Buddha taught something that I want to end with, because I think it's the most important thing he said. He did not say, "I have found the truth and I will give it to you." He said, "I have found a path. Walk it yourself." He was not presenting a belief system to be accepted. He was describing a practice to be engaged. And the difference matters. A belief you accept passively. You either believe it or you don't. It changes your mind maybe, but not necessarily your life. A practice you engage actively, every day, in the small choices, in the pause before you speak, in the moment you decide to give rather than hoard, in the examination of what is actually motivating your actions. And the practice changes you, slowly, invisibly, drop by drop. The path is not distant. It is not for special people with particular gifts or extraordinary circumstances. It begins in the next decision you make. In the next moment, you have a choice between reaction and response, between automatic behavior and examined behavior, between living on the surface and going slightly deeper. That's all it is. Not a destination, not an arrival, a direction. And you can choose that direction today. Not perfectly, not completely, just slightly more than yesterday. That's the practice. That's the path. And it begins where you are. Leave a comment. Tell me which of these teachings hit closest to home. I read everything. See you in the next one.